Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about how American media is saying that a lost America needs to start facing up to China's presence. Also, China is making a big move in the iron ore industry, aiming to melt down Australia's Iron Throne, while Russia's 29 billion tons of reserves are entering the game as a game changer. At the end of September, there was a piece of news that shook the mining industry. Reports said that due to price disputes, China banned imports of iron ore from Australian mining giant BHP, and authorities had previously set up China's own mining resources group. This group integrates China's overseas procurement rights, unifying negotiation with sellers like Australia, and helps secure better iron ore prices. Reports said China Mineral Resources Group wanted Australia to lower its iron ore export prices and demanded transactions be settled in RMB. Iron ore is crucial for China's steel production, but in the past, 60% from Australia. Because supply is so concentrated, Australia has strong bargaining power. As a result, China bears higher iron ore costs on one hand, and on the other hand, steel overcapacity complaints exist, and Chinese steel companies aren't making much profit. In 2024, net profits of China's top 4 listed steel companies, Baosteel, CITIC Special Steel, Nanjing Iron and Steel, and Hualing Steel, still don't match the net profit of one Japanese company, Nippon Steel. Lowering iron ore costs is a key issue. While China handles this, big companies want to cut costs and reduce Australian iron ore costs. As the world's biggest iron ore buyer, China wants to settle transactions in RMB. China's key bargaining chip is the steadily increasing supply of Russian iron ore. Previously, this wasn't widely known, but Russia has 28.9 billion tons of high-quality iron ore reserves. We must go back to the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022. China is the world's largest steel producer and biggest consumer of iron ore. In 2021, China's iron ore consumption reached 1.42 billion tons, mainly relying on imports. Import volume was 1.124 billion tons, accounting for 79% of consumption. China's dependence on iron ore is extremely high. Russia used to be the world's #1 in iron ore reserves, but it only exports 25 million tons of iron ore globally each year, which isn't much. Of that, only 8.5 million tons are exported to China, making up just 0.8% of China's total iron ore imports, a mere fraction. In contrast, Australia accounts for over 63% of China's iron ore imports, while Brazil takes up 32%. Together, these two countries already make up 90% of China's total iron ore imports, so Australia has been able to control the price of iron ore imported into China. Even though Russia is so close to China, it exports so little iron ore to us. Why is that? Russia's land area is as large as 17.09 million square kilometers, making it the biggest country in the world, and its mineral resources are extremely abundant. Russian iron ore reserves reach as much as 100 billion tons, accounting for 1/3 of the world's total, ranking first globally. Iron ore is divided into low-grade and high-grade ore, while China's own iron ore is mainly low in iron content. While China mainly has low-grade ore, Russia has a large amount of high-grade ore. Iron ore reserves in central Russia account for 57.4% of the country's total. The Kursk magnetic anomaly area is Russia's largest iron ore region, both in terms of reserves and production. This mining area covers 120,000 square kilometers. Here, reserves of low-grade ore with an iron content of 32 to 30% amount to 1.54 billion tons. High-grade ore, iron content 52 to 62%, proven reserves 29 billion tons. This is Russia's iron ore region highest proportion of high-grade ore. Globally, average iron content is 49%, while in China, our iron ore 34% iron content. However, in Russia's Kursk magnetic anomaly area, high-grade ores with 52 to 62% iron content exist, showing its value. But Russia exports only 25 million tons of ore annually, a fraction of its massive reserves. The main reason is Russia's low annual iron ore extraction. In 2021,
Australia produced 900 million tons in 2021, 35% global. Russia only 100 million.
Of the iron ore Russia mines, 80% is used domestically, with only 20% for export. Currently, most exports go to Germany, France, and Italy. Russia targets these developed countries with its iron ore resources not just to make money, but also to leverage their advanced manufacturing processes for special high-performance steel plates. Since Russia's technology in this field isn't particularly advanced, it signs bilateral agreements with these countries. They supply these countries with high-quality iron ore, processed and sold back to Russia as high-performance steel plates at favorable prices. This established a circular trade with Germany, France, and Italy, compensating for Russia's technological shortcomings. However, after the war in 2022, Europe imposed heavy sanctions, breaking this trade cycle and forcing Russia to turn to China. Russia's minerals and China's geographical advantage originally gave China an edge. China and Russia are connected by direct railways. There's no need for sea transport through the Malacca Strait, the US could block during wartime. This benefits China's resource security. As for Russian iron ore, if they can't sell it to China, they've nowhere to go. It's all about China. Both sides are a perfect match. Russia needs the iron ore China demands, with numbers rising steadily. In the first 4 months of this year, iron ore exported to China via Nizhny-Novgorod and Tongjiang ports reached 666,000 tons, a 22.9% year-on-year increase. Meanwhile, metal transported along the Nizhny-Novgorod-Tongjiang railway hit 542,000 tons, an 80% jump from last year. Behind these numbers is Russia ramping up its mining operations and the ongoing improvement of 2 cross-border infrastructure facilities. For example, the opening of the Tongjiang Railway Bridge has created an efficient steel corridor for Russian iron ore to enter China. Chinese imports of Russian iron ore are not only cheaper than Australian iron ore, but can also be settled in renminbi. For the past 40 years, an unwritten rule in global iron ore trading, everything is priced in US dollars, and offshore spot trading follows the Platts pricing index. Even if China wants to buy, it must exchange for US dollars, then trade through Singaporean brokers based on the Platts index. China has no say. But buying Russian iron ore is a different story. In China-Russia iron ore trade, 40 to 50% settled in renminbi, its use increasing significantly each year. This completely sidesteps Western sanctions on Russia, preventing their SWIFT system use. More crucial is the demonstration effect of renminbi trading. Once this practice spreads, companies like Brazil's Vale and South Africa's mining firms will consider opening renminbi accounts to sell iron ore. China should trade in renminbi. With Russian iron ore entering the market and China's demand slowing, pressure already exists on Australian iron ore prices. In early 2024, Pilbara Blend Fines price dropped 18% from its peak. Don't underestimate that 18%, based on last year's average price of $110 per ton, that's a $20 decrease. For the 4 major Australian mining companies, that means $10 billion less in annual revenue. The Albanese government is much friendlier than the previous administration, and mining CEOs are lining up to fly to Shanghai, bringing discounts and contracts to negotiate deals with China. That sums it up. Competition changed the game. With Russia's iron ore supply shifting, Australia's position as global iron ore king looks shaky, and China takes the lead. Big companies use their bargaining power. Our country imports 1.2 billion tons of iron ore annually. Even if the price drops by just $1, that's $1.2 billion. That's enough to support an aircraft carrier fleet. China wants to regain control over iron ore pricing, paving the way for energy expansion deals and de-dollarization. Also, I want to talk about how the diplomatic game between China and the US has become the global focus. Recently, Fareed Zakaria, a columnist for The Washington Post and host of CNN GPS, made a serious statement, saying that the US should really start taking things seriously. He drew a sharp contrast between China and the US, saying that at last month's United Nations General Assembly, US President Trump went on a tirade, criticizing everyone left and right. Failures were common, even at the UN headquarters. Decades ago, the Trump Organization renovated the headquarters building, while China, on 80th anniversary of relationship, put forward a global governance initiative, advocating for strengthening the multilateral system from multiple dimensions. As the US becomes more insular and implements protectionist policies, what is China hoping for? Just last week, China announced it would seek special and differential treatment developing countries in WTO negotiations. Han Yong, Director General of WTO Affairs at China's Ministry of Commerce, said this major move demonstrates the responsibility of a major developing country. The contrast between China and the US in trade policy is increasingly obvious, as the US has imposed discriminatory tariffs on countries in Africa and Asia. Meanwhile, China offers zero tariff preferences to all the least developed countries with which it has diplomatic relations. Zeglia said that through these clear contrasts, he fully agrees with the recent assessment by Foreign Affairs magazine, which is that the Chinese government has shifted from a previously passive and defensive stance to a more proactive and strategic posture, while the US is leaving both its allies and adversaries exhausted. This comes as Trump launches wave after wave of tariff offensives, along with verbal insults. China is now presenting itself on the international stage as a responsible power with policy predictability and a consistently steady stance. In this op-ed, the veteran diplomatic commentator emphasizes that the US is currently lost both politically and strategically, while China's optimized development path is ready to go, rapidly surpassing the US in various key areas. At the same time, China is positioning itself as a constructive global power with the ability to set the agenda. That's what Kalia wrote in the article. Technology is the most important area of competition between China and US. Both countries have broad influence, but China has established an overwhelming advantage. According to Bloomberg, out of 13 key technologies, China leads in 5 and is hot on heels in another 7. Especially in green technology, its dominant position is now unshakable. This stands in stark contrast to Trump administration's drastic cuts to government funding for basic science and technology. Even Harvard University, one of the world's top research institutions, was subjected to a full-scale crackdown by the Trump administration. So Zakaria's conclusion is that, for the past decade or so, the US has been comforting itself with the idea that China's development has gone off track. Now, Zakaria urges America to face up to the challenges brought by China, believing that the era of self-deception is over. China has already set its course and is now sprinting forward with full force. What's remarkable is that Zakaria, this American commentator, is actually more clear-headed than those anti-communist Chinese. Those people are still harping on the old tune that China is about to collapse any day now, but they have no idea how to deal with the harsh reality brought by Trump.